afternoon. Good afternoon. Just an announcement, please, if I may. Micro? Yep. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I just wanted to give a very quick announcement before we begin because, as you can see, we are beyond 6 o'clock, 6:05. I've been told that both of our panelists will be here within 5 minutes, so I simply wanted to let you know that if you could just give us another 5 minutes, we'll start immediately. But maybe it's best if we stay in the room. But just so you know, 5 more minutes, and thank you very much for your patience. And we will begin immediately once both panelists come in. Thank you. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen, first of all, thank you very much for your patience. I know that we had to delay a little bit the beginning, but we're very excited now to begin this event entitled The Future of the EU Foreign, Security and Defense Policy Post-Brexit. We're delighted that so many of you could join us to cover a very timely event, and we also look forward to a discussion, a short discussion afterwards. My name is Gustav Lindström, and I am the director of the EU Institute for Security Studies, and it is my pleasure to introduce our two distinguished panelists this evening. I think you all know who our panelists are, but we have Ms. Federica Mogherini, who is the EU's High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy and Vice President of the European Commission. And we also have Mr. Michel Barnier, who is the EU's Chief Negotiator on Article 50 Treaty on European Union negotiations with the United Kingdom. On behalf of my colleagues and others who worked hard to make this event possible, I wish to express our sincere appreciation for your presence here this afternoon, and we look forward to the interventions. We will begin with Ms. Mogherini, followed by Mr. Barnier, and the interventions will be a total of about 30 to 35 minutes, after which we will have a limited amount of time for questions and answers, and hopefully those will be focusing on Brexit. And you do have some sheets of paper should you want to write down your question. You also have a microphone system, I've been told, in your armrests. So with this, I take now the opportunity to thank again our panelists. And Ms. Mogherini, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gustav. Cher Michel, thank you all for being here tonight. Again, let me apologize on behalf of both of us for the short delay. We'll try to spend all the time we have here to share with you and listen also from you about this important issue. Let me say how thankful I am for this opportunity we have. But also, I would like to start with a special thanks to Michel for the work he's doing, but also for suggesting to have this exchange today. Our cooperation with the United Kingdom on foreign policy, security and defense is one of the most strategic issues at stake in this process. It has probably been under the spotlight less than other aspects so far, but this doesn't mean we have not been preparing for that or working on that, working closely together with Michel and his team, and also for that I would like to thank him and his extraordinary team. The events of this week in particular, these days, make it even more obvious that in today's world you need partners and friends, close ones. I said in Florence a couple of days ago that our world is in a state of chaos, and in the midst of such confusion, the European Union and the United Kingdom need one another. First of all, because the choice of leaving the European Union does not change geography. Britain is part of Europe, and this will not change. We will still share the same region. Now, if I'm not wrong, Churchill used to say that Europe is where the weather comes from. Now, personally, being from Rome, I have my doubts that the weather in London comes from there, but still we are connected. And today we are even more connected than before. What happens not only in the rest of Europe, but in the Middle East, in North Africa, in the east of our continent, will continue to matter to Britain, to the British citizens, as much as it will to the European Union. There was a time when British foreign policy was defined by splendid isolation. And it's clear to me that in today's world, this is simply not an option. Isolation would never work. You might try to isolate yourself from the rest of the world. It's difficult to imagine that the rest of the world will let you isolate from what is happening elsewhere. Our security is connected. Our economic growth is connected. We have an interest to stay as close as possible because we share the same strategic interests. And I have little doubt that our future is one of close partnership and cooperation. If you think about what has happened since the British referendum, that is quite clear in the field of foreign and security policy. On foreign policy, on security, even on defense, we are still taking decisions unanimously at 28. And let me tell you, those of you that are following the works in the Council, we have not had particular problems in finding unanimity over the last couple of years. On the contrary. The British interest and the European interest are still very much the same, and I guess they will continue to be very much the same. We reacted as one to the Salisbury attack, and on Iran, we continue to work on the same side for exactly the same goal. And tomorrow, Boris Johnson will be here in Brussels, together with the foreign ministers of Germany and France, to work together to preserve a deal we have achieved together, also with Russia and China, and we will save it together. So we will have the meeting with the 3 foreign ministers tomorrow, and then we will also have a meeting with the foreign minister of Iran, Zarif. This couple of examples I've mentioned that are just coming out of the last couple of weeks do not overshadow the ongoing work that we're doing, continuing to cooperate so closely within the UN system and within NATO, in partnership between the European Union and NATO, perhaps even more closely than ever before. But this doesn't mean that everything will be the same. So this was the reassuring part of my beginning. A majority of British citizens have decided to leave the Union, and we obviously have to respect their decision, although I wished it was a different one. But now we can and we must work to make sure that our new relationship works in the best possible way under the new conditions that the British citizens have decided to put in place. On our side, I see a European Union that is moving forward and getting stronger. After the UK referendum, many, and probably also many in this room, were predicting the end of our union. While we have seen, on the contrary, a relaunch of our common project, a recommitment to our unity, to our shared future. And I will give you 3 examples where I've seen clear steps on the consolidation of the future of the European Union as a common project. 1, I see a union that in the future will have more than 27 member states, because we see that our friends in the Balkans are moving forward on their path to join our family. And I believe it is clear to all, the future of the Union, mid or long term, will be at more than 27. Second, the EU defense. I see a union that is much more confident about its potential and also its responsibilities as a global security provider. The European Union of Security and Defense is taking finally its first real steps for the first time in our history just now, and still taking decisions at unanimity at 28. We now have a European Defence Fund for research and for our defence industry. We have joint projects and common commitments under the permanent structured cooperation used for the first time ever after 10 years of the Lisbon Treaties. And I have proposed to have one single financial instrument, the European Peace Facility, to finance all our missions and our support to external partners in the security field. So never as now, paradoxically, we are moving forward on one of the biggest dreams of our founding fathers and mothers, a European Union that is based also on defense and security, and still with the European Union having the United Kingdom as its own member state so far. The third short example I would like to raise with you is trade, because I see a union that is creating new opportunities for its firms, for its products, and for protecting its jobs through more and better free trade agreements as never before. And the list can continue. So this is how I see, and I believe the European Union will continue after Brexit in the field of foreign, security and defence. But what about the UK? When the withdrawal process comes to an end, the United Kingdom will not be part of our union anymore. It will be a friend, it will be a partner, but as a third country. And I've always said from the beginning of the story, you have to ask me about Brexit once it falls under my responsibility, which will be external action. At a certain moment, it will be a third party. Britain will not be a half member or a member ad honorem, because there is no such thing. Either you're a member or not. The way we work together will inevitably have to change. At the same time, I have no doubt at all that our cooperation should be and will be as close and as positive as possible. History and geography, interests and values tell us that our partnership will be strong and strategic. Michel will tell you more on where we stand in the negotiations, for sure, but I would like to say just a few words on where I believe we will be after 2019 on our foreign policy, security and defense cooperation. First of all, we will need the strongest possible channels of communication to discuss and coordinate our foreign and security policy. We, as the European Union, do not aspire, never, to impose our policies on our partners. This is not our style. And at the same time, we are autonomous in our decisions, and we cherish our strategic autonomy. Our partners do not have a seat at the table when we take decisions, but we do value and appreciate having their views and their advice, and obviously having them joining us once we take the decisions. For this reason, I hope we will be able to set up a consultation mechanism with the United Kingdom to coordinate our responses to international events, our positions inside international organizations, and our actions when our objectives align. This will also require a mechanism to share information in a smooth and secure way, as we already do with some of our partners. Secondly, I'm also convinced that the United Kingdom will maintain a strong interest on their side in taking part in our military and civilian missions. These missions contribute to our collective security in Europe and beyond. And if you think about our fight against piracy in the Indian Ocean, or our new training mission in support of Iraq's security sector reform, you clearly see that the United Kingdom could have an interest, will have an interest in continuing to be associated closely to our missions and operations. The difference will be they will not sit at the table where these missions and operations will be decided, but they will be obviously welcome to join, because cooperation with our partners in this field is not new. We have already signed framework participation agreements with 18 countries around the world to facilitate and allow their participation in our missions and operations. In the coming months, I will present the Council with a proposal for a new partnership framework for our security and defense policy. I see this as a mechanism for closer and more constant coordination with the non-EU countries and international organizations involved in our missions and operations, or otherwise associated to our policy in the field of security and defense. And this will be essential also in our future partnership with the United Kingdom. And finally, we will still have an interest, I believe, a reciprocal interest, to develop some of our military capabilities together. So I believe we can find ways, we will find ways, for the United Kingdom to cooperate with us in the framework of our permanent structured cooperation and with the European Defence Agency. As you know, talks are underway with the member states and within the member states, and that are part of the permanent structured cooperation in particular, on the modalities for the participation of third countries to projects under PESCO. So to sum it up, on our side, and I believe also on the United Kingdom side, we are ready to work together at the diplomatic level, on the ground, and when it comes to our capabilities. And I know, again, that these objectives, these goals are shared. The reason is simple. The security of the United Kingdom is our own security, and the security of the European Union is the security of the United Kingdom. There are bonds that cannot be broken. The politics may change, but some realities do not change. The United Kingdom has helped shape a European Union that is open to the world and committed to making the world a better place. Together, we have shaped our global strategy for foreign and security policy, which is based on ideas of partnership and responsible engagement that we continue to share. This is why I'm confident about the future of our partnership. It will be different, it will be radically different, but it will and could be a positive, constructive one. The UK is leaving our union, and I again wish it wasn't. It is giving up the power to use our common foreign and security policy and all its instruments. It is giving up its decision-making power at the European Union table. But it is not leaving this world or this continent, and we will still both have our interest in working as closely as possible together, not any longer as members of the same family, but as neighbors, partners, and friends, as I believe we will stay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mogherini. And I think in the interest of time, we will simply now give an opportunity for Mr. Barnier. And we will actually have just the Q&A afterwards, where we have an opportunity to follow up a little bit on this vision for the relationship after Brexit. Thank you.
Thank you, Gustav, and good evening, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dear Federica, General, dear Jorge, ambassadors. I have to apologize because I was late, not Federica. And I was late. I was late because it is not usual, but I took part to the General Affairs Council just to present the state of play of this negotiation to the foreign minister. So thank you for your patience. Ladies and gentlemen, our future partnership with the UK must go beyond trade. The European Union has said this many times before. It should in particular include a strong pillar in foreign security and defense policy. So let me thank the EU Institute for Security Studies for this opportunity today to discuss this future cooperation together with Federica Mogherini. And Gustav, your institute is the place for creative thinking in foreign policy and security, exactly what we need for this discussion. Back in April 2017, the European Council expressed its readiness to establish a close partnership with the UK in foreign security and defense policy. What unites us here is stronger, much stronger than what divides us. This was demonstrated after the attack in Salisbury. The EU reacted with a great sense of unity and solidarity with the UK. 10 months from the day of Brexit, 10 months, our clear sign to the UK and to the international community is that the security of the European Union and the UK is bound together. There is still a lot of uncertainty. Negotiations on the future with the UK have not started yet. We have had a first exploratory discussion. But there should be no uncertainty about our commitment to a future security partnership. Security challenges are, by their nature, cross-border. Solidarity is not to be negotiated. Any trade-off between security and trade would lead to an historic failure, and it would be a strategic mistake benefiting those who want to weaken us. We welcome, therefore, the UK's commitment to Europe's security as restated in the recently published UK paper, Framework for the UK-EU Security Partnership. Ladies and gentlemen, in the future, the EU will take decisions on the basis of the interests of the EU 27, and it will respect the UK's sovereignty. But the EU and the UK's interests are likely to overlap in foreign security and defense policy. As a consequence, I firmly believe that a close partnership is in our mutual interest. We should join forces and protect our citizens against global threats such as terrorism, which struck again in Paris this weekend, cyber attacks, and hybrid threats. We should join forces and shape the global order. We must continue to secure the nuclear deal in Iran together. We must work toward a political process to bring an end to the conflict in Syria. We will need to work with our African partners to combat poverty and address the root causes of migration. We will need to continue our work towards peace in the Middle East and continue to defend a two-state solution in Israel and Palestine. And I say this with today's tragic events in mind. On these and other foreign policy challenges, the EU must continue to be at the forefront as a credible but frank partner to the US and in honest discussions with, in particular, China and Russia. The EU is a global actor and will remain so after Brexit. It will continue honoring its responsibilities worldwide. The EU does not act in isolation. It has always favored multilateral and international cooperation. And the UK will be one of our most important partners, not least because of its permanent membership in the UN Security Council. Ladies and gentlemen, Prime Minister Theresa May said in Munich that the UK, as a third country, will pursue an independent foreign policy in the future. But it is also clear that it will be in the UK's interests to remain close to the values and objectives of the EU's foreign and security policy. This is why we will keep the door open for close cooperation. Obviously, post-Brexit, our solidarity will be organized on a different basis. We respect the sovereign decision of the UK to leave the Union, yet being a third country does not mean that the UK cannot have an ambitious partnership with the EU. This applies in particular to common foreign and security policy and common security and defense policy, which are subject to specific rules and procedures. These EU policies have developed over time in a flexible manner, and we cooperate with many partners. More than 25 third countries have participated in EU-led operations. The European Defence Agency, the EURE, cooperates today with 4 third country partners, and Federica has just mentioned a new partnership framework to enhance cooperation with third countries in the field of defence. While more work is needed to prepare for the UK's orderly withdrawal, we have begun discussions on our future partnership. These discussions are based on the guidelines adopted by the European Council in March and include a part on foreign, security and defence policy. I just showed to the Minister of Foreign Affairs what could be the architecture of the discussion with the UK based on 4 pillars: trade, specific cooperation for socio-economic cooperations, internal security and external security. And so, following the lines and the guidelines of the European Council, we have to begin now on an operational base this discussion with the UK. And I will work, obviously, in close cooperation with Federica and her services. And I will, of course, consider this close relationship we already have with partners such as Norway. The UK has decided to leave the Union and become a third country. As a consequence, the UK will not have the same rights as EU member states. It will no longer participate in the decision-making of the EU. It will no longer have the ability to shape and lead the EU's collective actions. British entities will no longer have the same rights as EU entities. These are the legal and, if I may, mechanic consequences of Brexit. And the reality is that political and legal arrangements with a third country cannot be a substitute for all the benefits of EU membership. But our partnership could be underpinned by a set of mechanisms just mentioned by Federica: dialogue, consultation, coordination, cooperation, and exchange of information. It could include 5 dimensions. Number 1, close and regular consultation with the UK on foreign policy. A shared assessment of geopolitical challenges will facilitate the convergence and consistency of our external action. This will notably be the case for restrictive measures. Dialogue and information sharing regarding EU sanctions will facilitate the UK's alignment with the EU. Second, when projecting the EU's support worldwide, we will be open to the UK's contribution. In development aid, the EU and its member states are the world's leading donors. We are open to contributions from third countries and to local joint programming. We hope that the UK will make use of these possibilities. In EU-led operations, in general, it's not secret that the UK's contribution has been rather marginal so far. We would, of course, welcome its participation in EU-led operations in the future, considering that the UK has strategic military assets. Third, in defense matters, the UK should have the possibility, where it will add value, to actively take part in a number of European Defence Agency's research and technology projects. We should, however, keep in mind that industrial cooperation, also in the field of defense, is intertwined with EU rules underpinning the single market. This will in particular apply to the new European Defence Fund. Fourth, exchanging information on incidents will make us collectively more effective in fighting cyber attacks. And finally, this future relationship should be underpinned by a security of information agreement between the EU and the United Kingdom. It will provide for the exchange and protection of classified information. It will facilitate the exchange of intelligence, as mentioned right today by Andrew Parker, the head of MI5 in Berlin. Ladies and gentlemen, just one word, a specific word on Galileo. There have recently been many press articles and many misunderstandings. The UK decided unilaterally and autonomously to withdraw from the EU. This implies leaving its program as well. So we need to put the cooperation between the EU and the UK and Galileo on a new basis. In doing so, our responsibility is to maintain the autonomy of the EU and to protect our essential security interests. The EU rules on Galileo have been in place for a long time and are well known to the UK. In particular, third countries and their companies cannot participate in the development of security-sensitive matters, such as the manufacturing of PRS security modules. Those rules were adopted together by unanimity with the UK as a member, and they have not changed. These rules will not prevent the UK as a third country from using the encrypted signal of Galileo, provided that the relevant agreements between the EU and the UK are in place. So, ladies and gentlemen, the level of ambition of our future partnership will be very much depend on the UK's readiness to commit. the more the UK converges with EU foreign policy and substantially engages alongside the EU, the closer the cooperation is likely to be. Of course, some defense and intelligence actions take place outside the framework of the EU, such as in NATO, and also bilateral relationships will continue to develop. And finally, the UK will continue to operate with partners in ad hoc groupings, such as recently in Syria. Yet, the EU is more than a coalition of the willing. It is a union at 27 of 440 million citizens that provides for stability and certainty in a volatile environment. A union that roots its actions in multilateralism, defends and projects value globally, and deploy a vast set of instruments. A union that is strong enough to best address current and future challenges. It seems natural, therefore, that we should build our cooperation together rather than build it piecemeal. This cooperation should be based on an alignment of foreign policy objectives rather than short-term and ad hoc interests. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, we will keep the door open to the UK as a third country. At the same time, our priority is to continue deepening our policies in defense and security. President Juncker has called for European Defence Union, President Macron for European sovereignty, Chancellor Merkel for a union that shapes its own destiny. The Union is enhancing its ability to act globally, with, for example, the European Defence Fund, EU space programs, EU Cyber Security Centre of Excellence. And the Union will continue to develop its partnership with NATO in the spirit of the joint declaration signed in Warsaw in July 2016. This is no ideology. There is no ideology on the EU side, no emotion, no willingness to punish, never, but ambition and respect for our rules. As I said in Berlin last November, our future relationship in the field of foreign, defense and security policy should not be designed through the lens of the past. Rather, it should take into account the geopolitical challenge of tomorrow. This is the spirit in which we will prepare for October the political declarations on the framework for the future relations, which will be on the side of the withdrawal agreement, provided that this withdrawal agreement is finalized. And allow me to repeat myself, we are not there yet. To be clear, if you look at this draft of the treaty, which is a nice green color, 75% of this draft treaty is now in green, which is a good point, but 75 that means 100%. And the last 25% which remain, in particular the Irish and Northern Ireland case, are very serious. So we are not that year, but we are now working on this future framework of the future relation, which must be ambitious. Thank you very much for your attention.
I would like to thank you both again for your interventions and for lining out your views on the future of the relationship, and in particular for providing very specific examples of how this relationship could move forward, very practical. Now, I'm looking at the time, and we have a very limited amount of time, so for that reason, I would like to open the floor now for any questions, any comments. If you could just make yourself visible, I'll take three. I've seen one hand here, one in the back with the white shirt, please, and also here in the middle. We'll start with those, maybe I'll take four, and then we'll leave it at that for the moment. So please, sir, if you could also kindly introduce yourself. Thank you.
So Paul Johnston, UK ambassador to the PSC. I thought I was going to be Daniel on the line then today, but I surprised myself, or not surprise myself, I'm very happy to find myself in very broad agreement with what both the High Representative and Mr. Barnier said. Sorry, yeah.
So yes, Paul Johnson from the UK PSC, very much in agreement with what both of you said, in particular the focus that the High Representative mentioned on some of the real world challenges we have, Iran, Syria, Middle East peace process, where I think we're demonstrating exactly the point you made about the overlap in interests and values and commitments. If you look at the High Representative's excellent global strategy from 2016 and the UK's Strategic Defence and Security Review, the threat landscape we describe is very similar, and I think that suggests, as both of you said, that we will have strong continuing overlap. You said, Mr. Barnier, in your Berlin speech, I think that you wanted a partnership that was broad, balanced and beneficial. I think we have very much the same sense. We want one that is principled. We accept that we're leaving. We accept all the points you make about autonomy, but positive, because there's a great deal that we need to do together to confront common challenges, and also pragmatic, that we need to look at how we can have functional, informal and formal consultation, because the world of foreign and defence policy, as you both know very well, is fast-moving and fluid, and we will need to be agile and effective to work together. So we will be strongly committed to getting the right sort of agreement with the help of both of you, and thank you for today's contributions.
Thank you, Ambassador. And I think we'll continue with the questions or comments. So in the back, please, if you can introduce yourself as well. Thank you.
Thanks. It's Adam Fleming from the BBC, so it looks like a British ambush is happening now. Mr. Barnier, how much progress has been made in the talks since the last European Council in March? Is it true that there's very little? And Mrs. Mogherini, do you think Galileo will be stronger or weaker as a programme without the UK taking part in a proprietary way?
Okay, thank you. And we have the last two questions or comments in the middle of the room, and then I want to bring it back to the panel. So I think, let me see, I know there was one on the, yes, yes, please, and then Mr. Taylor. There should be a microphone in your armrest, either on your left. Okay.
Paul Taylor, this really isn't a British setup because I'm applying for French citizenship. So I should ask Monsieur Barnier en français. It follows on from the last question. I think that a lot of what we heard from both of you this afternoon has been practical, looking for cooperation, looking for the closest possible relationship, and opening opportunities to work with the UK. And yet, the issue of Galileo, which is the current illustration of what could go wrong in this whole relationship, is in front of us. How can you, on the one hand, say that you would welcome the UK joining in European Defence Fund projects, in European Defence Agency projects, in PESCO projects, and on the other hand say that the project which has clear defence implications, Galileo, in which the UK has been involved as a major partner for the last 15 years, is now going to be closed to British firms, and the British should be happy that they're just going to be able to use the signal if they sign the right agreements. Aren't you sending the wrong signal there, if I may say so, and particularly with the implication that once the UK becomes a third country, then letting it share in the technologies and in the government regulated service would actually irretrievably compromise, I believe was the term, the security of the system. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll take the last question or comment, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. And my question is because both you, Ms. Mogherini, and Mr. Biden, you highlighted the importance of consultations with the UK post-Brexit and sharing information. So my question is, what would be the appropriate institutional framework for those consultations and exchanges of information? I know, for example, that the UK side has proposed the idea of having a consultative observatory seat in the EU's Political and Security Committee for the UK. So is this something that could theoretically happen, or would there be some other type of structure that could be established? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your questions. And now I would like to bring it back to the panel. You have each a microphone on the table. And I don't know if Ms. Mogherini, would you like to begin? Or Mr. Barnier? Yeah.
Just for Federica to have the last word. Adam, the famous Adam, asked me, have you reached very little? It was your right words, huh? Very little progress. I would say little, not very little. So it remains 2 rounds of negotiation from now to June, and I think nobody must have to underestimate the key rendezvous of June, huh? Because as I already said and often said, the clock is ticking. Huh? And let me recall that the date of the withdrawal has been chosen by the UK itself. Sending this letter in March last year, the UK government has chosen the date of the withdrawal in March 19. It's not our choice. Huh? So the clock is ticking, and we have to conclude and to finalize this agreement, this treaty, and to color in green the 25% which remains before October or November, because we have to keep, don't forget this point, we have to keep the time of the ratifications by the European Parliament, the Council, and the British side. So little progress, but we are working on technical issues, which is always useful. None of these issues are negligible. The 2 key points which remains, where there is risk of failure, are the governance of the agreements and the Ireland and Northern Ireland issue. And I repeat that if we want an agreement, the withdrawal agreement in October, including the transition period, let me recall also that the only legal base for the transition is Article 50. That means that if we want the transition, we must have an agreement on the withdrawal. If we want an agreement on the withdrawal, including the transition, we must have, in the framework of this agreement, operational solutions for Ireland and Northern Ireland. So we have two weeks of negotiation in the next weeks, and we will do our best. Because my line, for the very beginning, is to reach an agreement. No deal is not my option. Huh? Galileo. I think the UK, not you, some in the UK has to assume all the consequences of their decisions. This country has decided on a sovereign base, democratic base, and we respect this decision, even if we regret it profoundly. We respect this decision. This country has decided to leave 750 international agreements the day of the Brexit. 750 international agreements. And it had decided to leave Galileo in the current framework of the membership of the member states. So no decision had been already taken for the future cooperation between UK and Galileo. And obviously we will have cooperation between UK and Galileo. Obviously, as we have for the United States or Norway. Even to the access of the PRS signal. But the UK knows perfectly, because it had voted this decision, that for some informations we have to protect the member states. It's a unanimous decision of the 28, including the UK. So the current legal framework is this one, not another one. So that is the point.
Okay, Ms. Mogherini.
Thanks, because this leaves me space for answering to other issues, but I think I would like to underline what Michel just said. Decisions have consequences. And you can regret, as I do, as Michel does, as all of us do, the choice, the decision that was taken. But that brings consequences. And today the question is not whether this would make Galileo or other fields of action stronger or weaker. The point is that a decision has effects, consequences. This would probably signal the need for campaigns before one takes decisions that are well informed, rather than managing the results of decisions afterwards that might bring some contradictions on the surface. But this is the state of play where we are. So it's not a matter of making stronger or weaker Galileo. For what concerns us, for sure, Michel and myself, our job today is to guarantee that the future union, well, the current union still, as it is at 28, and then the future union when it will be at 27, or the future union when it will be more than 27, will be as strong as possible, given the conditions we have. I would like to mention one other thing on PESCO projects, because some of you referred to the fact that the United Kingdom might be welcomed to join some PESCO projects. This is still to be defined. The modalities of this are still under discussion. And it is going to be a very particular system because, as you know, the countries, the member states participating in the permanent structured cooperation will define themselves in the coming months, I believe, hopefully before the end of the year, the conditions under which a single third country can be invited to join a specific project run by those member states on the basis of an assumption of and an analysis of the added value under agreement, most likely, of all the other member states that participate in the permanent structured cooperation. So it will be modalities for an invitation that will be made on an ad hoc basis, not just for the United Kingdom, but for any other third party that could be interesting for the Union to have on board. That is the point. The major consequence of the decision of Brexit in the field of foreign security and defense policy is this, is that is it an English word, barycenter? The center of gravity moves from being a decision maker to being potentially a beneficiary or someone that joins decisions that have been taken by others. To me, this makes the big loss for the United Kingdom because it loses many instruments that today it determines. And our British colleagues know very well how relevant and how determinant are their inputs and their contributions to shaping our foreign and security policy and also our defense decisions. And to me, it's a loss mainly for the United Kingdom because they will lose instruments and a decision-making role. For sure, under the conditions that will be determined by the EU institutions and the member states, once the UK will be a third party, it will be potentially invited to join, but the decision-making process will always be a European Union one. And again, you cannot be half member state. Either you are a member state or not. On consultation mechanism, this is exactly one of the things on which Michel and I are working upon now. So I would not release more details than the ones we have shared with, first of all, member states. But one thing I can say for sure, the European Union doesn't have, on the contrary to the United Nations, observer status. You're a member or you're not a member. You can have strong consultation mechanisms, but membership is for members. So we will discuss and we will shape the most effective mechanism for consulting, for sharing, for coordinating as much as we can our foreign and security policy orientations. As the ambassador said, in practice, this will come, I believe, quite naturally because we have the same orientation, we have the same analysis of the situation on the ground on all major issues and topics that are on the table. So I do not see the complexity of finding common orientations, while obviously we will have to shape some mechanisms that will be functional. But again, efficiency and effectiveness of the mechanism for me is what counts the most. But again, half membership is not foreseen by our treaties in any possible way. So either you are a member or you're not.
I may just add one word. I already said that there is no added value in Brexit. And until now, I listened to everybody, even Mr. Farage and some others, leaders of the UK political debate. Nobody has been able to prove and to give me a proof of the added value of the Brexit. But I'm ready to listen. So it cannot be, coming back to the point of the Galileo and some other points, it cannot be business as usual. It will not be business as usual because this decision, this sovereign decision, has so many legal, human, social, technical, financial, economic consequences. And we have to, just in our work, daily work as negotiators, to limit the consequences. Sometimes when I read some UK papers, I would just take the example not of the external security or defense or external policy, but just internal security, that it seems, reading this paper, that we have a country, we just begin a process to accession. Huh? So it cannot be a business as usual. Huh? In the British British paper on internal security, they ask for many opt-in. They never ask in the past, just before leaving. Huh? This is a problem. It cannot be business as usual. I'm sorry for that. Once again, I regret profoundly this decision. Huh? But we have to limit the consequences for both sides. Huh?
Yeah, and for our partners, because what Michel said, but now we'll stop it, is that the UK leaves 750 international agreements. Our job, and my job in particular, is not only to guarantee that the future European Union will be an effective global player in the field of foreign, security and defense policy altogether, but also to guarantee to our partners that all these agreements, first of all, will stay. They will simply apply to a territory of the European Union that will be different from the one that was at the time when these agreements were signed, but the legal basis for that stays absolutely sound, and that the European Union will continue to be that strong partner, and even probably even a stronger partner, because somehow the other 27, I think, realized what they were risking to lose in the moment of the Brexit referendum, so that the European Union will continue to be the strong, reliable partner that the world needs today. And it seems to me quite obvious that it needs it more than ever. So we'll try to do our best to continue to work on the interest of Europeans and also of our partners in the world, because we know that the world demands European Union much more than sometimes Europeans themselves realize, but we know that.
Ms. Mogherini, Mr. Barnier, thank you very much for taking the time to join us today, and also for answering these questions and also providing a lot of additional details surrounding those issues. I'm afraid we've run out of time, so I know that there could be more questions and comments, but as was mentioned now, this is a continued conversation. There will be developments. And there will be, we know that there's at least 25%, but there are many other issues that will need to be gone through. So the conversation will continue. But for now, I would like to thank you all again for joining us, for having asked these questions, for your comments. And I would also like to thank all the collaborators, both within the EU ISS, but also with the respective staffs who we have worked closely together to make this event possible. So thank you to all, and have a very nice evening. Thank you.